The following program is a presentation of BaseNet Internet Television.
I'm breathing fire. I'm breathing fire that we can live with. I'm breathing fire.
Welcome to the Crashing Glass Podcast. I am our host, Holly Hurley, along with my co-host, Jill Henley, and that was Marissa Levy with our opening song, Breathing Fire. Today with us we have two special guests, Janine and Monica, both of whom have a lot of experience with nutrition and fitness, and we're going to think of this as kind of a follow-up to our first episode, Brand New Chicks. So hi, ladies.
Hi.
Hi.
So tell us a little bit about your background, Monica.
Well, I got certified by the American College of Sports Medicine back in 1995 so that I could become a personal trainer. And I started out just training clients one-on-one at a pretty big, well-established gym out here called the Pro Club, where a lot of the Microsoft employees work out at. And I did that for years. I was a high school health teacher at the same time. So I taught high school health for 9 years and did the training in the evenings. And then I started having kids almost 11 years ago, and so I continued to train. And then I started about 5 years ago teaching group fitness classes. So I really enjoy leading the group fitness classes a lot. It's actually even more fun than the one-on-one training to me. And I've always just been very passionate about nutrition. So from teaching it at the high school level to teenagers, and then obviously anytime you're training clients, nutrition goes hand in hand with exercise. So I do a lot of nutrition consulting with my clients as well so that they can reach their weight goals. And so that's just kind of my deal. I eat, I walk my talk, and I really am passionate about health and fitness.
That's awesome.
Monica, tell us where you live.
Oh, sorry. I'm from, Bellevue, Washington, which is near Seattle, and I live actually in Snoqualmie, Washington.
That's awesome. How about you, Janine?
I am from the Boston area, and my background at school was not in fitness or nutrition. I was a marketing major at UMass Amherst, and I spent about 10 years after graduation in the retail world as a buyer. Once I got married and had kids, I decided that traveling to New York City and California and to the Orient several times a year wasn't going to fit with my lifestyle. So when my kids went off to school full time, I decided to do something that would allow me to be with them when they were home and to be active and, get something going on my own while they were in school. And that led me to training. So I became certified as a personal trainer about 6 years ago. And since then, I've added the certification of strength coach as well. A lot of what I do is one-on-one and small group training here in town. And we focus on, of course, exercise. We spend a lot of time really on the whole body because I really believe in balance. So we talk about nutrition, and we actually taste things. We bring things. Yeah, Jill has tasted some things of mine. We do some meditation. We talk about stress management. We laugh a lot, and the camaraderie of the group is really what holds it all together. So again, nutrition is a big part of it because you can work out all you want, but if you're going to eat horribly, you will not change the shape of your body. So I read a lot. I consult with nutritionists in the area, and I just love what I do.
That's awesome. I know that eating is definitely a big part of it from my experience. So I'm so glad you guys are on to talk about that today.
It really is.
I'll jump in for a minute and just say that we named this show Chicks Eating Healthy, and we thought that we would definitely probably do fitness, workouts, exercise will inevitably come up because, as they've said, it goes hand in hand. But we thought we'd try to, cover some things about women eating healthy from, their 20s all the way through as, 30s, 40s, 50s, and beyond. So the first thing I wanted to jump in was to see if our guests can dispel some of the myths about carbs versus fats versus protein. Because the trends, as people know, the trends keep changing. So we had first the low fat, everything was low fat. I feel like that goes back to the late 80s or something, where everyone was trying to start to eat lower fat, and then it shifted to low carb, and then now protein has become extremely important, I think, in the media and people's diet. So I wondered if Monica, I can start if you want to go first, to kind of talk about your recommendations for that in your experience, and to talk about some of the trends and what you think the future will bring.
Well, I'm actually really curious to hear what Janine thinks, because I know you said she has maybe more of a scientific understanding of foods and things. So I'll give you my general understanding, but it may not be as specific as what Janine can contribute. I think that the whole problem with going back to the 80s, like you said, with that low fat, is that people were not getting enough fat in their diet, and so they didn't feel satiated, and so they would eat a lot more of everything else, and so your caloric intake was still too high, and that's why people then backlashed on that, because it wasn't causing you to lose weight if you're eating too many calories. Because it's weight loss is just an equation. It's just, if you have more calories coming in your day than going out, then you're going to gain weight, and if you have less,
I'm so glad you brought that up from the get-go, because that was one of my things I had jotted down. Like, doesn't this really just come down to calories in versus calories out, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's probably, different people's bodies respond to foods differently, and I don't have a lot of knowledge on the whole, ectomorph versus mesomorph, or different types of bodies, that really respond differently, and I don't know if I believe in it, or I don't think I know enough about it to kind of judge it. But I think that my basic thing is I don't look at any food as an off-limit food. There's absolutely nothing that I wouldn't tell any clients to avoid as well. I think that deprivation is just the thing that leads to wanting and craving foods more. So my big thing is just that I try to lump protein or high fiber in with my carbs. So I hardly ever eat, a piece of fruit or anything by itself. Every meal and snack I have, I make sure that there is protein, fat, or high fiber in with the carbs, and that way your blood sugar is not skyrocketing as much as it would if you eat carbs by themselves. So if you eat carbs, something simple that your body can process really fast, then your blood sugar goes up very quickly, because your system can digest carbs very easily. And then your pancreas puts out insulin and then brings it back down. Well, if you're constantly having those spikes from eating carbs, then it's hard on your pancreas, for one, and it's supposed to cause more weight gain or more storage of fat in the abdominal area and stuff. And so I just tend to try to eat protein with every single thing I eat, so that your blood sugar is going up slower. High fiber, protein, and fats don't get digested as quickly by the system, and so the blood sugar goes up much slower, and then the insulin can come out slower, and so it's just a healthier way to eat for your body, and then it keeps you full longer. So I just don't really go for any of the low carb, low fat, high protein, anything. I just think all of those are just kind of trends or fads that have caused somebody to have some success because they're doing something differently, or because their caloric intake is lower, and then because it works for a period of time, they go kind of crazy or to the extreme with whatever that fad is. And I don't know that it actually, any of them are really healthy to do if you're not doing things in moderation, or or using all the food sources. So I'll let Janine expand on that.
Yeah, Monica, I definitely agree with you, and generally what you're saying is absolutely true. I do believe in more high protein, a lot of vegetables, and very limited carbohydrates. Limited carbohydrates, I mean in the form of refined carbs, because there are carbohydrates in things like nuts and vegetables that are actually very good for you. Overall, it's for the last 25 to 30 years, we've been listening to government recommendations, the medical establishment, and the food advertising industry telling us that low fat and non-fat is the way to not only lose weight, but to protect our heart. And if that was really the truth, we would have seen a decrease in coronary heart disease, heart attacks, and a host of other diseases in this country. And actually, we have seen the opposite. All of those diseases have gone through the roof. All the while we have supposedly been following this low-fat, no-fat program. So I think the trend right now is toward more protein and less carbohydrates, as we are coming to realize that low-fat is really not the problem. So research absolutely shows out there that fat is not the enemy, carbohydrates are. Carbohydrates circling in the bloodstream deposit themselves as fat in the bloodstream in the form of triglycerides, and that is what leads to cholesterol in the arteries. So in general, I say eat real food, like Michael Pollan does. He's a great nutrition author. He says eat real food, not too much, mostly plants. Carbohydrates, refined carbohydrates, are definitely the enemy. If you think about how all of the carbohydrates, processed foods have come around over the last 30 years as we got more and more industrialized and companies realized that they could make food cheaper and in more mass quantities, they did things like partially hydrogenate vegetable oils. And that led them to be able to put food on the shelves with a longer shelf life at a significant cost reduction to them. And if meanwhile it's coming out of our pocket, we're buying it all because we think it's low fat, non-fat, but really it's hurting our health. So
I wonder sometimes too, like, I think that like food science is a good thing for survival. I don't necessarily think it's a great thing for everyday eating. You know, like all the refining of things and the preservation of things. Like, it's a beautiful thing scientifically. Should the bomb go off and we need food in 20 years that needs to be stored, but it's not a great thing when you're talking about like how you should eat for function every day. You know.
I
Like
think
you're saying, how much food is in our food?
I think one of the things to keep in mind too that I think confuses people sometimes, to add to what Janine's saying, is that people, when they think of the word carb, they think of bread, pasta, grains and stuff. And the thing is that fruits and vegetables are carbohydrates. And so when I say, I don't go for the whole low carb thing, it's because when, I think with the food pyramid years ago, your 60% of your diet's supposed to come from carbs, and people got confused and really were saying, oh, great, that's my license to eat tons of bread and pasta and cereals. And really, 60% of your diet should come from carbs, but it can come from fruits and vegetables, absent of a lot of, you hardly need any grains. And so that's the clarification, I think, sometimes, because I'm like you, Janine, for dinner, I always have protein, whatever the protein source is, and vegetables. That's all I eat for dinner. I never add bread. I hardly ever eat pasta or those kinds of things.
Right.
But it's important for people to understand the differentiation, that low carb does not mean that you're not eating tons of fruits and vegetables.
Right.
And that's when I'm saying I always link all of those things with protein as well. So,
right.
Now, the ADA, the American Dietary Association, I think, and you will be able to tell me more, but they have changed that food pyramid just pretty recently to now. It's got a picture of a plate with every food group there on the plate, everything included. So
Right.
how recently, like, the ADA seems to be on some kind of 5-year delay or 10-year delay. I guess they just have to wait for all the research to come in until they make a big change like that.
I've read a lot about it, and I think this is my own opinion, is that there is so much lobbying that is done at that level. There's so much studies and committees that are formed, and by the time all these studies and these committees get their results and present them to whatever congressional committee they have to talk to, then you have the lobbyists for the food lobbyists who are saying, okay, well, we don't want you to say that because we're here representing the dairy farmers and we don't want to hurt their industry. Okay, and then this group of people is here representing the cattle industry and they don't want to hurt that. So you get everybody arguing, and what you end up with is a new form of the food pyramid on a plate, but is it really that accurate? I don't know. And Jill, yeah, it's probably behind the times, and I definitely don't think you're going to see ever really a food pyramid truly represented and there for the health of the average of any human being, because the big business helps steer what the government does.
yeah.
And I just want to jump in about that exact point, because I did an About Boston piece for BaseNet TV this week on school lunches, and it'll come out in about hopefully like 10 days or so. It'll be up on the website. But the exact point is that the original piece of legislation from the Obama administration was to limit, for kids' school lunches, to limit servings of potatoes to 2 per week. So whether French fries or whatever they call those oven-baked fries and the other kind of hash brown things, whatever it is, to 2 servings per week. Now that's 5 there's only 5 lunches in a week, right?
Mhm.
So the potato growers group, lobby group, and then some other lobby groups pushed back on that. And with the final piece, the law that was signed through that went through Congress, that did not fly. So that is not the case. They don't have to limit it to 2 potatoes a week. They can have 3 or 4, because that piece didn't go through because of the potato growers lobby.
Yeah, they're very powerful. Every industry has their own lobby group, and all of them are very powerful. So my general feeling is you got to know what you're eating, you got to know where it comes from, you got to do your research and make your own informed decision. When you rely on the government, on the medical industry, or just one avenue alone to get all your information, it's not going to fly, because it's going to be somehow jaded to benefit somebody.
Yeah.
Well, and I also think that's a huge part of why we're seeing so many permutation of corn and soy and things, because so much of that is subsidized by the government, and they've tried to make the most out of what they're growing. And while, again, I think it's a great scientific, thing forward, I think when it comes to eating, it's dangerous. Because
Right.
it's in they just sort of put it in everything to kind of get rid of it, and they're substituting it for other foods that are foods,
Right.
that are not processed to the nth degree.
An example that I have about that, Holly, is high fructose corn syrup, right? That's from corn, made from corn, and it is chemically altered, and it has so much fructose in it, which is so horrible for you, way worse for you than regular sucrose or glucose. And if you've been to the grocery store recently and you really look around, you find things now that have no high fructose corn syrup in it. For instance, Heinz ketchup has a whole line called Simply Heinz, where they have taken out the high fructose corn syrup. There's Pepsi, Mountain Dew, and it's called Throwback Pepsi, Throwback Mountain Dew. I'm not advocating drinking that, but they've actually made it with just regular sugar instead of high fructose corn syrup. So there's another instance of the corn growers, benefiting from making this really cheap high fructose corn syrup. Food manufacturers buy it, they profit, but who ends up getting hurt? We do.
I think that's very true. And I think the sad thing is a lot of the places where they've just substituted it with sugar. And you're like, no, the answer isn't don't eat high fructose corn syrup. The answer is don't eat these crappy foods in the first place.
Monica, what do you want to add?
It was kind of fading in and out, so I didn't hear all of it. But yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it can get really scary to think, if you think too much about what you're actually eating, it gets kind of like a paranoia to me. When you go to the grocery store and you're looking at all these foods and you just have so little control over how it's made, and what's really in it. And it's just like going back to what Tajinian said, if you can eat foods that are the closest to the earth possible, then you just feel the healthiest. Your body works the best and you feel the healthiest the closer you can get that food to when it was picked or butchered or whatever, because it's nerve-wracking. And I feel that's why sometimes I'll shop out here. They have a store called PCC where it's everything is almost organic, and you also don't have to question like the humane, all the animals have been treated humanely or died as humanely as possible, and all of you just have that guarantee sort of when you go in that you don't have to really question the food, but it can get kind of scary if you think about it too much.
That's right. I have 2 sayings, and I think, Jill, I've already shared one with you. One is, if it didn't have a mother and if it didn't come from the ground, don't eat it. And the other one, if the cereal turns your milk blue, don't eat it. And if you can't pronounce it, don't eat it.
Don't eat it. Well, speaking of
Along those
cereal,
lines-
go ahead. Sorry.
No, that's okay. Along those lines, I'm curious as to what you guys think. A lot of people, the cool thing to do now among like the people I know who are weightlifting is, or who are really trying to get slender, is they're like, oh, I'm going full paleo. I'm going to do paleo diet.
I like that. It's actually closest to how our ancestors ate, and our ancestors didn't have heart disease, cancer, or the 50 million other problems that we have.
Huh.
I kind of find it, I kind of hate that they made it sort of fatty, because it's really, because I do believe in a certain amount of good grains and things like that, but I wonder sometimes, I'm like, you gave it a cool name, and I knew girls who were fainting at the gym because they're like, oh, all I've had today is one piece of chicken and a handful of nuts, and I'm like, what, you you don't not eat. You just,
No.
you know, I'm like, no, don't not eat. You know, like, 'cause
Right.
they are like, well, I can't find stuff that's that close to the ground. And you're like, oh,
I think
Right.
part of the problem that I have with the paleo, because there's something, I don't know if you guys have CrossFit out there, but there's a huge following of people that do CrossFit, which is, you know, real camaraderie thing like Janine was talking about. They really are in there for the social kind of support and network, and they all do the paleo. And the problem that I have with it is that a lot of people can't spend as much time on nutrition like Janine's talking about. And so the average person is not going to be as meticulous about their food intake and how they shop and everything as, say, Janine would or I would if I can't, you know, when I can. And so you end up with a big portion of clients or of the United States of people that say, well, I can't eat like that. I don't have the time, or I don't have the desire, I don't have the passion for it. So I'm going to still buy things that are processed. It doesn't work for my family to eat in that way. And so I think that you have to give people kind of a bigger spectrum to eat from, because if you just do the, you know, if it didn't have a mother and if it didn't come around, don't eat it, you have a big percentage of the population that's just going to say, well, forget it then, because I can't eat that way. It's too, they don't have the time for it. And the problem with paleo to me is that when I listen to those people, they are depriving themselves of certain food groups. And so they become really obsessed with the ones that they're missing out on. And they feel that deprivation, and then it becomes really hard to stick to. And that's why I say with my clients, I absolutely will not have any forbidden food, because if you're doing the paleo and these people are not eating, you know, cereal ever or bread or anything, then they start to feel, you know, kind of crazy or manic. And for me, I think fiber is a really important part of the diet, and I start every single morning with Kashi cereal and high fiber cereal and milk and fruit. That's what I eat every single morning, and it works really well for me, and it works really well for the clients that I have that do it. So I'm not a huge fan of, you know, pushing paleo to the point that I think a lot of people do, eating a ton of protein, which too much protein is hard on the kidneys, or they start to snack a lot on nuts and things like that, and the fat intake is too high. And so I think there has to be a balance, and I really am just not into any of the fads like that. I think you got to eat a little bit of everything.
That was great. Yeah, I agree. I think that the deprivation probably really does come into effect, because obviously chocolate cake and, you know, things that are like really rich, and you want to keep those as, you know, keep those under moderate. But even just like cereals and breads, I know if I went a day without having some sort of whole grain cereal or bread, I would crave that. So never mind trying to go weeks and weeks and weeks with something like that. That's a paleo diet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I agree.
Do we want to jump into anything else about breakfast? Janine, I know you have some, I mean, because Monica, I know that the Kashi cereal, I know Kashi advertises that some of its cereals, that one serving has the same amount of protein as an egg does, which always makes me feel good because eggs are a good protein role model. But Janine, you had some thoughts about breakfast that I wanted you maybe to mention, and kind of what you think works for you and your clients.
Yeah, I'm pretty strict when it comes to breakfast, and but I do understand that there are a lot of people who love to have certain carbohydrates for breakfast, and you know, I'm not here to tell people do not eat that, but I've seen it in myself, I've seen it in my family. We have, the rule here is no carbohydrates for breakfast. I think that if you give yourself a week and test it out and try and see how you feel, if you refrain from carbohydrates in the morning, you may find that you feel a lot more energy during the day, a lot more mental clarity during the day. Eating healthy fat and protein for breakfast sets up the neurotransmitters for the day and really sets you on your way. My kids haven't had cereal, oh gosh, in over a year. They're 13 and 15. They don't even ask for it. Not even a bit. So
How do you get enough fiber into your clients and yourself and your family?
Fruits and veggies.
But even like, you know, an apple has 3 grams of fiber. You'd have to eat 10 apples in order to get 30. So
We eat a lot of vegetables, a lot. We eat a lot of fruit, but we eat a lot of vegetables. So greens at every meal. We always have salad at every meal. We have a lot of it.
See, for me, I actually would counsel if we were doing a low carb cycle, or if we were doing a less grain heavy diet with one of my clients, I would if they were really struggling with it, for me, I always struggled with it because I've done weight loss competitively on a reality show where I had to have weeks and weeks with no carbs, and I would still struggle with energy. I mean, after being on that diet for a long time, and I found if I could just have, I typically do a little oatmeal at breakfast, maybe with a little whey protein or maybe with like a scoop of peanut butter, because I just can't get going without a little carb in the morning. And I often tell my clients that they're struggling with a lower carb diet. For me, I find like a tiny bit in the morning just helps. Like I don't know if it's because of that nice little kind of increase that a carb gives you, you know, the nice little insulin boost, but I can't, I don't know, man. I find for breakfast is the time to have them for me.
Well, I think that I mean, one of the keys to this is probably finding what works for you, right? And
Yep.
I think that message, I'm sure when all three of you have worked with clients in, you know, in the recent future, you have said you've got to find what works for you. And if that means, you know, Janine eats chicken, may eat chicken for breakfast, but no, I know that, and I'm gonna try that one of these days. I have to get like psyched up for it.
Right.
Because I love my cereal, but I think that whatever works for you, and like I know Monica, you started at the beginning talking about, you know, people's different bodies, and if it's okay to kind of, because we can circle back around again, but I wanted to maybe take this opportunity to go towards metabolism, since it is kind of about what works. Like different people's bodies are different, right? They're not only different shapes and different sizes, but they're different inside. You know, they're different how they metabolize food, and how they deal with different foods. So if one of you wanted to take this next part, which is, you know, tell us a little bit about what you know about metabolism and how it's affected by what you eat, and can you reset it, you know, because we hear that it slows down, and you know that makes people nervous that it gets slower, but I just wondered, you know, if you could talk about that a little bit.
I'll start with just a very simple thing that I always think of. I don't know too much. I don't feel like I have as much information maybe as Janine may have on this, but I think the one thing that I try to stress to my clients is that if you try to think of your body more like, you know, a fuel tank, and when you gas up the tank or when you eat, then you eat enough so that you can burn that off in the next couple of hours, and then you refuel again in a couple hours, just enough to use it up again for the next few hours. If you kind of do that continual cycle for your body so that you're getting some food every 2 to 3 hours, then I think your body responds to that. And it kind of, if you get in a real habit of that, of eating at the same times every day, it seems to me that your body understands that, gets that message, and then it stops storing as much as fat. Because if you go through periods of sort of, you know, your body's a little melodramatic, but it goes into like famine mode where it thinks, well, if I haven't fed it in 16 hours because I slept and then I chose not to eat breakfast and I haven't eaten in a while, the body survival mechanism is to store more as fat for long term. So that next meal, even if it's a healthy meal, is going to have a higher percentage of it stored as fat than it would if you were eating very continuously. And so I just think one of the biggest things that people need to remember is to just eat often, and smaller meals often, I think, is really the best thing that you can do for your body as far as metabolism.
I absolutely agree with that. Absolutely.
I have to say the same. I have known people, especially people who are a little bit older, who came up in the time when they told women not to eat between meals, who've had a lot of success by limiting their between meal consumption. But I think it was just because of the lessening in calories. I think as far as your metabolism is concerned, you know, like you guys said, just to avoid the big insulin spike and sort of binging when you're hungry, I think little snacks throughout the day, they also keep you from feeling deprived, because it's easier to eat a small amount if you think to yourself, I can eat again in another 2 hours. This isn't a big deal.
Right.
You know?
Absolutely, yeah.
Right.
Because food is such an emotional thing too. You know, I mean, we look forward to it, and you reward yourself with it, even if you're, you know, trying not to do that with sugar or whatever. Food in and of itself is an enjoyable experience. And so the pleasure-based part of it is much better if you do what Holly just said, which is, you know, I can handle stopping right now because in 2 more hours I get to do this again. If you don't overeat as much, because I'm one of those people where I'm finishing my dinner and I'm already excited about my breakfast cereal the next morning. Like, I have to look forward to the next meal. And so I think it's definitely an easier way to keep yourself balanced is if you are eating very often. And you don't have to go, God, now I can't eat anything for 6 more hours until dinner. You feel like you should load up, or you just feel starved.
Yeah, I agree. I've seen it with clients who have said to me, well, it's noon and all I've had to eat is Swedish fish and a Diet Coke. So, God, it's not that many calories. And I'm trying to explain, okay, but the hormone storage is like sky high right now, and every single thing that you're putting in your body is going to be stored because you're in hibernation mode. And
Right.
it's really difficult for people to understand that. I find it's very difficult for people to understand that. So yeah, eating every couple hours is a definite way, and also resistance training, because the more lean mass you have, the more metabolically active your body is. And if you think about it, it's all how to build a better engine. If you think of your body as an engine and you want to be the most efficient engine, just kind of like how you just said, Monica, to be more efficient, you got to be a good fat burner. And if
Right.
you've got more muscle on you and less fat, you are going to burn more calories even at rest. So, you know,
That's just, Janine, because the muscle's there, right? It's just
Yes.
because there's more muscle mass. Okay.
it's metabolically active. In order for the muscle to be there, it burns calories to work. And whereas fat can just sit there and do nothing. So I think when you asked, can you reset your metabolism, the thing that I would suggest is, as we age, typically people do less resistance training. You frequently hear about people as they get older, a lot of their exercises maybe walking. I know my mom walks 18 miles a week at the mall, which is phenomenal, and she does no resistance training. That's the norm. And I think that if your metabolism slows down as you get older, it could be because you are doing less resistance training and you're having less lean muscle mass, therefore your metabolism is slowing down. So in answer to the question, Jill, can you reset it? I would say simply pick up some more resistance training as you get older, and even if it's just a little bit, continue to hold on to good muscle tone, and
Yeah.
you'll have a better engine.
Yeah. And resistance training, just to be clear for anyone listening, is as simple as push-ups, sit-ups,
Yep.
that those fall under, and then also, why don't you give a couple other examples?
Yeah, you don't have to be in the gym doing Olympic weight lifts, although you can if you want. But so yeah, simple body weight exercises, walking up and down stairs. There, you're lifting your body right then and there just to take a step. You're right, push-ups, squats, sit-ups. Even if you get a can of soup and do bicep curls with it, that's very lightweight, but you don't need to be thinking, oh, weightlifting, oh, I got to be a big bodybuilder. No, not at all.
Well, and what do you say? I know when you're training your clients too, what do you say to those girls who are like, I don't want to lift a lot of weights because I don't want to get bulky. I don't want to be bigger.
I was just
I
gonna
like
tell-
that voice, Holly.
I think that resistance training people need to think of as just when your muscles are contracting. So anything you're doing when your muscles are contracting, can be called resistance training or strength training. I think that the thing for women to remember is a lot of girls say that they don't want to bulk up and they don't want to do something because they don't want to get bigger. And when you're looking at like resistant bands and things that are providing no weight, like versus dumbbells or barbells, you can get a lot of muscle tone and a lot of definition and a lot of strength from doing things with things like bands that aren't going to cause bulking. And for women in general, we're not born with the same amount of testosterone as men, and so we don't have the ability to bulk up like men do. Obviously, different women are going to bulk, at different rates because everybody has different levels of testosterone. Some women may have more than others, and they would bulk up more. But in general, if you can do an exercise with 20 repetitions, you're not going to build a ton of muscle. The guys that are building muscle are doing it because they're using a weight so heavy that they can't do more than 5 or 6 reps, and that's where you're going to get a lot more bulk.
Right.
Well,
And
I
also,
think- oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, women don't have nearly the amount of testosterone that men do. So there's no way that they, by doing resistance training, are going to end up looking like a man. I don't know any client of mine that looks like a man. I don't look like a man. And I do a lot of resistance training.
Well, and I think a lot of times women hit a plateau because they do that body weight resistance, or they're doing up to like 25, 30 reps, and it's time for them to try something different or add weight or maybe do a program for a while that actually involves a little bit of hypertrophy to change what's going on inside their body. And I think they're so scared to touch those weights. I think sometimes it comes down to they're afraid. And I know I was, because I spent such a long time, doing that. And I do think maybe sometimes you have to introduce some serious weightlifting if a woman is in fantastic shape and her muscles are ready for that. And I think a lot of women are afraid of that because traditionally it's not been something we were encouraged to do.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't know how would you guys feel, I mean, things may have changed since I was training because it has been a few months. It's been 6 or so months since I've been studying like I was, but.
No, I agree.
Because I think sometimes they're scared, because they think, well, I'll do 25 reps because then I know I won't get big. But at that point, sometimes for some women, it's just cardio, your muscles aren't working that hard anymore because it's too easy.
So they need to lower the reps and increase the weight a little bit to keep the results going forward. I guess I'm surprised to hear. See, now I've never trained clients. I just sort of had just trained myself. But I'm surprised that women are still. It seems to me that in the media now, sexy women are portrayed with muscle. There's just some of the hard bodies and they're showing like this person's been working with a trainer. Like let's say Leanne Rimes is just someone who comes to mind, and she's got like a really good hard body now, and she's got muscle tone. I would think that women wouldn't be so skittish about getting some muscle, like some actual definition now. And
I think what it is, Jill, is that some women that are already a little bit heavy they shy away from it because they aren't doing the things that they need to do to decrease their weight. So if they're eating too much and not doing enough cardio, and then they build muscle on top of that, I think they think that they're going to get bigger overall.
Okay.
And so what it really comes down to is them realizing that you've got to make a shift, you've got to change your diet and do cardio and do the strength training all in unison so that you can actually see your body transform. You're not you're not obviously wanting to get bigger most of the time for most clients. But if you don't make all of those changes, then I think they fear that if I start lifting weights and I build muscle on top of this, I'm going to feel even heavier than I am now.
Okay.
And so some of it is realizing that they need to make those other changes in tandem, and then they will start to see those results of actually slimming down. And like Janine said, the more muscle mass you have, the more weight you're going to, the more calories you're going to be able to burn even just at rest. And so I think sometimes it's just that fear of their body getting bigger and not necessarily realizing that it could just transform in shape and definition, like you say, and actually look healthier and better and more defined. I think they just think of the size going up. It's just like when some people get really scared of the scale going up. They get so attached to the number on the scale. But if you build muscle, obviously muscle weighs more than fat, that your number could actually go up. I always warn clients that when you start strength training, you may actually see no weight loss or slight weight gain because you're going to be building muscle, and you might build muscle quicker than you're actually losing the fat. And so people get real scared of anything that's going to cause their size or their weight, scale number to go up.
I tell people to throw away the scale or put it away and go into your closet and get out your favorite jeans that you can't wear anymore, hang them up in your room, and now they're called your inspiration jeans. And when you can get into those, that's when you know that you have achieved some level of success. And we're not looking for huge success. We're looking for little steps at a time. Fitting into the old pair of jeans is way more important than a number on a scale. Way more important. And that's like what you said, Monica, because the same amount, 3 pounds of muscle takes up a lot less space than 3 pounds of fat. So you can maintain the same number on the scale, but be in a smaller body.
And I have to add the whole scale thing. And I know most people will disagree with me on this, but it works. It really works well for me. I don't want people to get attached to a number on the scale or be afraid of a number, but I have to admit I weigh every single morning, and I encourage other people to do that. And a lot of people that get too obsessive about it and will weigh themselves 5 or 6 or 7 times in the day, then I tell them to put the scale away. But I weigh myself every single morning, and the reason is because when you get very, you can't be very objective about your own self, your own body when you look in the mirror. And so sometimes people end up gaining weight and it sort of starts to build up and they don't even really notice, and then all of a sudden they do get those pair of jeans. I'm like, oh my God, I can't get these jeans on that used to fit me. And it's, 5, 6, 7, 10, whatever, 20 pounds later. If you're weighing yourself every day and you're getting some type of gauge of where am I at, I find for me that it's really an eye-opener, because what can happen is you can catch yourself before you go up 5 or 6 or 7 pounds. If I know where my weight is at and where I'm my most comfortable and I've gone up 1 or 2 pounds, I can catch it then and go, okay, I got to crack down. I got to stop snacking so much or reduce the amount of dessert I have or whatever it is, the tactics that I use that work for me. Then I catch it early and I can keep myself much more in the realm that I want to be in. So I'm actually a big fan of scales, but not necessarily the number on it, because you have to think of body composition. Doing your body fat and knowing that your body fat is at a healthy place is more important than the actual number. But I think it's a good barometer to measure by during the day.
I know, like when I was working with a trainer, I definitely ignored the scale, but I go through phases, like now, obviously I'm in school, so I'm not working out like I used to. I don't have a partner with me to measure my body fat, and I can measure theirs and to measure me, and I measure them with the tape measure. And so I think, if you don't have all those things at your disposal, it's nice to have the scale as kind of a guide. You don't want to go too far in quote unquote the wrong direction or the heavier direction. But I think especially when you're building muscle that eventually burns fat, you can't focus on the scale. It just doesn't, it just doesn't match up. It's like you said, it's like was it Monica or Janine that said, like you can be very low body fat, you can be smaller, but you can be the same weight. And
Yeah.
so,
Right.
yeah, it depends. Yeah, so it sort of depends on what you're measuring and when, and you have to. And for me, I know, I don't know if this is true for everybody, but because I came out of, I know I have an unhealthy relationship with food. For me, I think of myself as like a lifelong addict. I'm always in recovery,
Yeah.
So for me, it's a constant monitoring, and I think sometimes I have to switch up how I monitor it just to keep myself healthy,
Yeah.
and on the right track. Like for a while I'll watch my body fat, for a while I'll watch the scale, for a while I'll, eat more protein and less carbs, and the next week I'll count calories. And for me, I'm constantly switching it up for myself just to stay on the right path and continue to push in the right direction.
I also
Holly,
think-
that's a very intimate thing. Thank you for opening that up, because I think we can probably go into talking a little bit about, what about like the ideas of binging and just kind of how to sometimes how to handle that if you've done that during the day. But Janine, you go ahead, because we can move to that next.
I forget what I was just going to say. No, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Well, it'll come back to you. I think it'll come back to you, because I'll just say this one thing about the. I love the fact that I loved what you said about the inspiration genes, because I think that. I mean, I personally, again, I weigh myself pretty much every day. I'm kind of like Monica, where if it's up more than like 2 pounds, I'm like, oh, that's weird. What have I been doing, or what have I not been doing? But so I do keep a handle on it that way too. But I think that sometimes after I go to Janine's Fit Core class, her boot camp class, and we do work all those muscle groups, usually every major muscle group, and lots, it feels like the whole body gets worked in each class. And when I walk out of there, sometimes I can't lift my arms up above my waist, and because they're so sore and tired after an hour of that. And I think to myself, I'm building muscle right now. Like, I can feel it. And someone who is concerned about the number on the scale, who's not happy with the number on the scale, that number, I'm sure after going through a hard resistance training class like that, it's going to go up. Like if they're being, if they're not, unless they're changing their diet drastically, they're going to see their weight go up, and then that gets discouraging. So I think that idea of fitting into the genes and like that great, mindset of that, you can have a smaller, like the muscle takes up less room. Is that what you said on your body, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, did you remember what you're going to say?
Yeah, I think that the scale becomes, I think, more important when you have more weight to lose, because you are, changing your diet and you're exercising, and you got a good chunk of weight to lose. So you'll see some pounds fall off quicker than somebody who does not have that much weight to lose. It's kind of like the theory of the low-hanging fruit. It's very easy to get that. But somebody who doesn't have a heck of a lot of weight to lose, those people, when they get focused on the scale, that's when I'm really saying to them, okay, guys, put the scale away. You're talking about weight that you want to lose, but you're going to put on so much more muscle. So how much does it really matter when you don't have 50 or 60 pounds to lose?
Right. Okay. So now moving over to like the idea, I know we talked about grazing as a great way, eating every 2 hours or so. And then, Holly just mentioned about, so they got kind of, in my mind, the opposite of grazing is binging. But so I thought maybe we could talk about that, like one of the last things I had planned for the show, which was women and their eating habits, or as Holly said, as a relationship with food, because it is probably different than men's relationship with food sometimes and as a whole. And I guess one of my first thoughts is that do you guys have anything to say about like binging, and it's going to happen, and maybe suggestions for, I know Janine, you may have a suggestion for moving on from there.
Yeah, well, I have trained some people who have definite binging issues, And you know what I say to them? A lot of the binging issues, like big binging issues, are psychologically ingrained. Some of us, probably everybody, does a little binging. The birthday cake comes and you have a slice then, and later on in the day you have another one and another one. You know what? Do it, get it over with, move on, forgive yourself, and eat clean the next day. Beating yourself up over it is only going to make it worse. It's going to make you have more negative energy surrounding the whole idea of food. So just whatever it is that you ate, go to bed, get up. Today's a new day. You start off on a better foot and be really, really good today.
I think one thing I would add to that, because I lead not Weight Watchers, but like a, Weight Watchers type group during the week for some women. And I think that the guilt stuff is so ingrained in people that it's really, really the worst part of their binging cycle is that they feel like once they've done it, they feel like they don't deserve, like one client always says, she doesn't feel like she deserves to be thin. And so she kind of self-sabotages herself the next day and the next day and the next day. Mm-hmm. And I think that one thing that I would say as far as eating clean the next day, I think that's a great theory, but I always actually tell people don't wait till the next day. Because what happens is sometimes if somebody goes to work and, somebody brings cinnamon rolls in the morning and they've already had breakfast, but that smell is just getting to them, so they have a cinnamon roll at 9 a.m., and then they feel like, well, I've just blown it. I'll start better tomorrow. But then they consume 4 other things that day that ends up setting them back so far. So I always try to remind people, like, if you want it, have it and enjoy it. Or if you had it and you didn't even enjoy it, but you just feel feeling badly about it, just start clean right then. Get a huge glass of water and make the rest of the day really healthy so that when you go to bed, you're not feeling so guilty about it. And you're also not setting yourself back thousands of calories that you could consume if you say, well, today's a wash because I started out with something, a cinnamon roll at 9 o'clock, and so I'll start better tomorrow. So I really try to tell people to just, whatever you had, do it, enjoy it, and then the next chance you have, start drinking a bunch of water and make that next meal healthy. Don't wait till the next day.
That's a good point. That's a really good point. I also tell people don't beat yourself up and not have it, and also don't eat the whole thing. So in the case of a cinnamon roll, maybe you eat half of it.
Right.
Maybe when there's a dining room table full of buffet desserts after a holiday and you walk in there and say, oh my God, and now you're all stressed, pick 2 or 3 that you love and get a sliver of each. And then on your plate is the size of equivalent of one thing, and eat it. And then you've eaten a little bit of everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great advice. About kind of going the idea of binging, I've noticed this, a little bit, and I just wondered about you guys and your clients. So when you do start grazing and you do really eat very small, let's say small snacks and small meals, and you do that for a period of weeks and months, and you just kind of get used to that, do you guys notice that when you do go somewhere, whether it's holiday or whatever, and you eat like kind of a real meal, a big meal, does your stomach, it feels like my stomach, it's like the food is pushing against my stomach, because I wonder if my stomach did actually get smaller. Like, does your stomach, can it change that easily?
I think so. I mean, I think that what your stomach gets really used to whatever size you eat. And so if you start eating less and your stomach kind of is used to that, then when you go for a bigger than normal meal, you feel really stuffed. And so if people are stuffing themselves at each meal, then they tend to, end up being really heavy. And when you're losing weight and you start to kind of train yourself, I don't know whether you actually, Janine might know, I don't know if it's actually a physical shrinking of the stomach, but your satiety level comes, quicker, I think, when you're getting yourself used to smaller meals, and it might be a mental thing. I don't know. Janine, do you know?
Yeah, truthfully, I don't know either. And I tell people when we talk about being, I was stuffed myself, and I felt so awful. Well, I tell people, okay, when the meal is coming up, not just any old meal, but say you're going out to dinner for an occasion or whatever, and you get, think about how you are going to feel after you ate that. Try to focus in on that feeling, that very, very, very feeling. And it takes practice. It takes, just like yoga, it takes practice trying to take yourself into the feeling that you're going to have when you have overeaten. And when you get there, then you can think, do I really want to still do this? Because I know what I'm going to feel like. And if you practice putting stop in, you may not go ahead and eat stuffed.
So then, now that we're talking about like holidays and occasions, and it brings me to alcohol consumption and the calories that go with it. You
Blame it on that.
please do, Holly.
Well, I know that like the problems there is a whole camp of people who truly feel that that alcohol slows your metabolism down. There's some research to say like alcohol is just like the worst thing you could do to your body. But at the end of the day, I typically tell my clients, treat it like you would a white flour or a sugar, because it basically goes to the same kind of fat in your body. It's a similar processor, but also like it's just calories. At the end of the day, I'm like, listen, if you want to have 5 drinks at the bar, that's fine. But remember, that's 600 less calories you get to eat that day. And that's not necessarily a good thing to drink on that little calories, like. So
I'm gonna add one thing, and then I have to jump off because I've got to go to work, Jill.
Okay.
But, the one thing I would say about alcohol is that alcohol is used by your body much quicker than food. And so the one thing that it is a calorie is just a calorie, right? And alcohol is 7 calories per gram versus fat is 9 calories per gram, and carbohydrates and proteins are 4 calories per gram. So it is a more high caloric, thing to put into your body in the first place. But the other problem is that once your body has alcohol in it, it will use that first because it can break it down very quickly, sort of like a refined carbohydrate. Like you said. And then the foods you eat after you drink end up a bigger percentage of it ends up turning into fat. And so, because your body has all this blood, glucose circulating through it from the alcohol, and it can use that and access it really easily. And so the foods that you eat get stored as fat, even if you're not eating high-fat foods. And so you could be eating a really healthy salad, but if you've drank a whole bunch first, then that salad is going to get put into your fat cells because your body is getting the signal that it doesn't need that energy source because it has enough from the alcohol. And so the one thing is that when you drink, you tend to eat more, and if you're eating after you drink, then you are going to actually consume more fat, or end up with a higher percentage stored as fat. So
that salad will go stored as fat, even though it's a salad.
So I always try to tell clients if you're going to drink afterwards. Like people always say, well, I need to have my glass of wine or whatever. If you can, have it as dessert. Have it later in the evening where you're not going to be consuming food afterwards, and then it's not as big of a deal. The problem is most people like to drink while they're cooking, which so do I. Like if I'm peeling garlic, a chore that I don't really like doing, it's much more fun with a glass of wine. So if you're going to be doing, if you're drinking, most people end up drinking before a meal and through the meal, and then that's where I think weight gain comes really high, hand in hand with alcohol consumption. So I think whenever you take alcohol out of your diet, you're always going to lose weight. But
Okay.
I've got to jump off. It was so fun to hear, what your girls' theories are and stuff and expertise, and I'll look forward to hearing it when it's all edited, Jill. And thanks for letting me be a part of it.
Oh, thank you, Monica. That was great.
Good night, Monica.
Good night.
Bye, girls.
Bye. Janine, did you want to chime in on alcohol?
Alcohol, well, let's see, to avoid sounding like a perfectionist, because I've already told everybody not to have any carbohydrates for breakfast, I will say you got to pick your poison. And if there's one thing that you pick, one or two things that you can't give up, and if it's alcohol, and have it in moderation. Think long and hard about what kind you're having and know what you're drinking. So beer is not necessarily good for you. We all know beer belly, right? Maltose is the form of sugar that's in beer, not great for you. Clear alcohol is better than alcohol that you cannot see through. So vodka, gin would be better choices. What you mix them with really, really, really counts. So when you put Captain Morgan's and Coke, there's a lot of calories. If you are having Absolute Citron and soda water, that's a better choice. Wine, red wine, has tremendous health benefits for your heart. So again, pick your poison. It's one thing that I don't get.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that Holly, I thought that was such a cool thing for people, for women to think of. Well, if I have a glass of wine, that's fine. It's just like eating, a croissant or or something, something that's like refined flour, refined sugar. It's like eating something that's kind of like dessert or just refined carbohydrates. So just have it and not worry about it. I mean, obviously that there are a lot of calories in alcohol, and I think either whoever just said, like, when you it was Monica before she signed off, when you cut it out of your diet, you often do see that you'll lose weight, easily.
Yeah, so I love hearing other people say that, because I have definitely had trainers and known trainers who are my friends who were very into the, alcohol is poison for your body, no alcohol. But I think a lot of things are poison for your body in too much amounts,
Right. Right.
So I actually have a question for you coming off into sort of discussing, we were talking a lot about metabolism earlier. Is your body different? Is your metabolism different in your 20s than it is in your 40s? As you get older, do things change?
This area I am not as well versed in, but what I do know is that metabolism has a lot to do with your hormones, and your hormones change as you get older. So certain hormones will act as fat storers, certain hormones act the opposite way, and that all is tied in with your metabolism. So I think it's important as you get older to know what hormones are doing in your body. And if you're not feeling right, if you're feeling really tired, not a lot of energy, depressed, gaining weight, you could have a problem with your adrenal glands or your thyroid gland. And simply changing how you eat can alter your hormone profile, which can help your metabolism. So I think that if, once again, you read up, do your research, know what you should be eating, and practice that, you'll feel good. And if you run into some bumps on the road and you're not feeling great as you get older, I personally think the best thing you can do is hire a very, very good clinical nutritionist, because that person is going to help you figure out inside out, from the ground up, and they will teach you how to eat properly to fix that, versus a more mainstream doctor might be more inclined to give you maybe a medication to help with whatever hormones out of whack, and thereby putting a Band-Aid on whatever problem could be happening, instead of educating you on how to live healthier.
I've heard a lot of talk about soy and how soy affects estrogen. Is that a concern? Like, if you are switching maybe to vegetarian, or if you're eating a lot of soy, or maybe people who are allergic to milk.
Yeah.
I mean, does that change how your body functions a little bit?
Yeah, soy is estrogenic and can raise your estrogen. There's a lot of research about that. I'm not well versed in it, but I do not eat it myself, because it can contribute to higher estrogen. And I know that research shows that women who have had or who are at risk for breast cancer should absolutely stay away from soy.
Wow, that's crazy. Because, we talk about it a lot of times as being such a healthy food because it has such a good amount of protein among, other benefits that, vegetables have. And I find it so shocking, it's that same thing that people always joke about, well, they'll tell you it's good for you today and tell you it'll kill you tomorrow,
Right.
you know?
Right.
But I think that's interesting because I actually, I'm doing an experiment right now where I'm trying not to eat meat. Actually, it started as like, I told my husband I was going to try it, and he said, "You'll make it one meal." And so then, of course, I'm stubborn. I had to see how long I could hold out. So I wouldn't say that I'm going vegetarian so much as I have entered into a dare with my husband. But
Which sometimes is a bigger motivator, Holly.
it's very true. He's a great motivator for me. But he's also, even when we were working out, he used to weigh like 165, and organically, just through eating a lot of healthy, lean proteins, has very low body fat and is very big. He's one of those guys who worked on having functional muscle mass and was like very, very strategic about it. So, when I eat badly, he's the kind of guy who'll be like, "You're not going to feel good if you eat that." It's not that he cares if I get fat, though I'm sure he does because he loves me, but he honestly, it's like a lot of people are like, "Oh, I can't believe he'll say that to you." And I was like, "No, he knows that if I eat something bad, for 6 weeks after, I'll be like, oh, I'm so fat." But that said, the soy thing has been interesting because I feel like my body's changed a little bit, and it's only been like a week. It could be mentally perceived, but I thought about even my menstrual cycle because I am in that prime time over the last couple of weeks was different this month,
Huh.
and I wonder.
Not eating meat.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, it was different because of your not eating meat.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's the only factor that changed this month, you
Wow.
know? So I thought that was a fascinating thing because I've always sort of been one of those people who said, like, "Pff," because a lot of the people who ask me about the soy research are people who really have bigger fish to fry, like guys who are not eating healthy anyway, who are not having any protein. They're like, well, I think I should switch to a whey protein shake instead of a soy one. I'm like, I think you should intake 300 less calories. I don't really care where they come from.
Holly, why are you doing that experiment? What gave you the idea to do that?
I think it came from I've always definitely my first trainer when I went through the reality show, and I've always struggled with my weight traditionally down to being a younger person. It had always been a concern for me. I was one of those girls who grew really fast and then had body issues as a younger person, and my weight yo-yoed a little bit, and then sort of at the worst point I went on this reality show and lost around 40 pounds in about 2.5 months.
Wow.
And I mean, it's a lot in a small amount of time. However, I've had friends who've done things like, Jillian Michaels, like 90-day challenge. I mean, I know people who've done bigger things, but for your body, it makes a mark. And that trainer was he was a drill sergeant, and the book that they gave us was Burn the Fat, Feed the Muscle by Tom Venuto.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like my first, nutrition book, essentially. It was just a great book because it has a lot of research, but I was very high protein for a very long time. And I sort of felt like I just wanted to do something different. I also know that, like, when I went high protein, sometimes because I was on the go as a trainer, a lot, I'm not a good big cook. I don't cook for myself a lot, so I was doing a lot of shakes, and I wanted to kind of an excuse to return to eating more vegetables,
Mm-hmm.
And so I sort of just felt like it would be something different, I like to mix it up every now and again. I just thought, this will be something that I really haven't done before, at least not since I was a very young person. I limited my meat intake, but I never, cut it out altogether. And I thought, let's try this. But I always have been very skeptical about it because I know it's hard to get in enough protein, enough iron, and it does require being very judicious with your other intakes.
Yeah.
So,
Now vitamin A too.
oh yeah, I didn't even think about vitamin A actually.
So saturated fat, that's important for cell development and cell maintenance and cell membrane. So how are you getting that?
We do a lot of olive oil. I do a lot of avocado.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't yet started taking like fish oil supplements or anything like that, but I'm not per se averse to it because, like I said, I'm sort of stumbling into this. I'm not doing this for like really. I'm not doing this for like other I love animals, but I'm
Right.
not really limiting other things, but I've been doing a lot. We do a lot of naturally occurring fats. I really enjoy those.
Good.
They help stay full.
Yeah, that's true. You need it. Your body needs it. Fat doesn't make you fat. The right kind of fat and the right amount is actually very necessary for you to have. So that's good.
Janine, that actually makes me think that was one of the questions. I have a couple questions actually to fire at you before
gosh.
we close.
Okay.
Two from a couple of our listeners, and then the one from me was actually about the right fats. I know you had mentioned that sometimes, as that goes with metabolism, that sometimes people just are not eating the right fat. So again, would you just comment on that quickly about some foods? I mean, we know nuts fall in there, olive oil, and can you name a few more?
Oh, well, let's see. It's like snack foods, you mean?
I mean, yeah, let's go ahead and name the snack foods. That's fine.
Like
Yeah.
peanut butter with an apple, peanut butter with celery, full fat yogurt, full fat cottage cheese. Oh gosh, meat protein, chicken is good for you. We said nuts, cheese, any kind of cheese.
Any
So,
kind of cheese. Okay.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you say full fat yogurt and full fat cottage cheese are great. Those are good fats for us to have.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that answers a couple of the questions, because one of the questions from our listeners was, when in doubt, when you're in a hurry, what is your go-to quick snack? And it sounds like, well, full fat yogurt, that's easy to grab out of the fridge.
Yep.
And I know the Greek yogurts, I mean, they have higher protein now, but you can buy those Greek yogurts that are full fat, and so
Yep.
you're probably getting a bunch of protein and a bunch of fat
Yep.
all in one, but not a lot of carbs.
Right, right, right. Right.
And I know you grab chicken as a snack a lot.
Chicken like a cookie. Yep. Instead of grabbing 3 Oreos or 3 Chips Ahoy, you keep the chicken in the refrigerator, wrap it up in a little paper towel, and back down the driveway you go with the hand on a wheel and the other hand with a piece of chicken.
Chicken, I know. That is just so great. I love it. Okay, so the nuts, the yogurt, the chicken. Okay, so then actually the question from Kristen, one of our listeners, is about peanut butter. Again, peanut butter's been one of her go-to snacks, or to eat and to stay away from, let's say, cookies or ice cream or anything. So, but she's wondering, she's confused about it because she's read that it sometimes falls in the too much peanut butter. I guess you can sometimes eat too much, or you're just eating spoonful after spoonful. So, any thoughts?
Yeah. Well, let's see. First of all, we don't put the spoon in the jar of peanut butter and eat it like your kids will do when they sneak frosting behind your back. You would eat the peanut butter with something that maybe has some fiber in it, like an apple or celery, the two things that come to my mind. Then you're having a healthy fat, which is the peanut butter, with some fiber, which is the apple or the piece of celery. It's better to eat natural peanut butter rather than commercially prepared peanut butters. They have partially hydrogenated vegetable oil, which is very, very, very bad for you. So at the point where you're going to add peanut butter into a healthy snack profile, you should get natural peanut butter. Yes, the kind that you have to refrigerate, the kind that you have to mix up with the spoon, because the fats naturally separate. The partial hydrogenization that happens is what makes your peanut butter stable and able to stay in the cabinet instead of the refrigerator and not separate. But it's actually not a good thing. If you taste Skippy or Jif or the commercially prepared, you get a taste for that and you like that, but do a little test. You'll feel an aftertaste in your mouth, and that is the partially hydrogenated vegetable oil. When you eat natural peanut butter, you don't have that. You feel like you're eating a nut.
Right.
Yeah.
You get used to it, and then it's like when you eat other kind of peanut butter, it feels like you're eating frosting.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
there's so much sugar in it.
Yeah, and you can experiment and try other nut butters. There's almond butter, cashew butter. There's all kinds of different nut butters to make variety.
I like sunflower seed butter too because my niece is allergic to peanuts, so I picked that up when I was living with her. So good.
Is it?
Is
I've
it
never
good?
tried it.
Okay.
it's so good.
Sunflower seed butter. Cool.
Yeah, so good. But
All right.
it's so weird that you talked about that, Janine, because I found that with peanut butter and then with bread too. If you do eat like small amounts of bread and you eat like the whole grain, or you eat like a whole like any kind of like if you get accustomed to eating things like oats and eating whole grains and eating like brown rice with the shell on,
Mm-hmm.
you start to try to eat the other things and it just tastes like the texture's all wrong.
Yeah, because somebody out there has tried to make it less expensive and more available to people and easier and convenient. And somehow along the way, we've lost the taste.
Yeah.
And it has adverse effects on your health to go along with it.
Well, this was great. I feel like one of the overarching themes of today is that those 7 words that you said earlier from one of your favorite authors, which was, eat food, eat real food, not too much, and mostly plants.
Yeah, Michael Pollan. Yep.
Yeah, and I just feel like I also think it's so fascinating about the throwback to whatever I'm always interested in how things trend and come and go, and I call it the pendulum swings back and forth, from low fat back to low carb, back to this, I just find that so funny how that goes, and I'm fascinated by those trends, not just in food and healthy and nutrition, but in all things. But the fact that really, if we go back to our ancestors, we go back whatever before manufacturing and processing, 100 years ago, or 200 years ago, however far you want to go back, that's they had it figured out then. And then when we got industrialized, we screwed it all up, and now we're sort of swinging back to, making your own. Janine made her own chicken broth from the chicken bones, which is what our grandmothers and great grandmothers used to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just real food, and it's natural and it's delicious.
Mm-hmm. That's true. If you think about our ancestors and your body and just what your body's made to do, there are certain things that your body likes, and there's a reason for your body to like those foods. It's usually because you need them. There are certain things as human beings we don't eat because they don't taste good. Foodstuffs that I can't really think of, but there are things that you could eat, but you don't because they don't taste good. And that's because your body doesn't need them, basically, in a very high level. So why not go back and eat the saturated fats that your grandmother ate and cook with the lard that she cooked with, because that is things that your body actually needs on some level. And what you said, Jill, when industrialization came into play, so many of those tastes they try to replicate with chemical processes and chemical additives, and in doing so, they've made our nation so much more unhealthy. So go back to very simple, traditional foods, and I think that you won't go wrong.
Thank you. Well, this was excellent. I feel like we could do a whole another show, and Holly, I'm sure Holly would agree that maybe a couple months down the line we'll bring you and Monica back on, and we'll have sort of different topics that still relate to eating healthy, and we'll do it again.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah. Holly, do you have any chick news for the week?
Oh, no, I was in this so deep, actually. I was so excited about the nutritional stuff, and I guess because we're out of time anyway, it's probably for the best, but no chick news for this week. Sorry, guys.
Well, I can throw out one little quick blip of chick news.
Go for it, please.
It's actually just, I saw the movie Haywire the other night.
Oh, yeah, I'm dying.
Oh, how was it?
It was unbelievable. I recommend it to, men would like it too, because it is an action film, but because the action hero is a woman, and she's not, she's a different
an MMA fighter, right?
She's an MMA fighter, yeah. So it's not like she's very attractive. She's very compelling to look at for sure, but she's not sexualized like some of the other female action, hero movies that we've seen, like you mentioned, Holly, recently about, is it Laura Croft? It's a little different. She's this woman, this Haywire film, and her name is the actress's name is Gina Carano, and she's the real deal. And the quick bit of chick news is that she was an MMA fighter, and she was, I think, a pretty good one.
Oh yeah, her Muay Thai record was 12 wins, 1 loss, 1 draw, and her MMA record was 7 wins, 1 loss, 0 draws.
So
she's a great MMA fighter.
Okay, so she was high-end MMA fighter, and the Hollywood director Steven Soderbergh was watching one of her matches in his hotel room, just flipping around, caught her match, and said, "She is so compelling. I'm going to write a movie about her." And, And they did. They wrote it. They cast her as the principal. She's the star, the action hero. She had never acted before. and it was a great movie. So her name is her actress's name, or the MMA fighter's name is Gina Carano, and I highly recommend seeing Haywire for all the chicks.
For all the chicks. I am super stoked about this, actually, Jill, and I'm so glad you brought it up because I've been dying to talk about it anyway. I don't know if you've heard me go off on this, but I loved the original Buffy the Vampire Slayer movie so much more than the TV show because I feel like these days in Hollywood, they always cast some wimpy little tiny actress who looks like if you kicked her in the shin, her leg would break right in half. And then all of a sudden, because, especially as a health professional, and I don't know if you feel this sometimes, Janine, but I look at these girls and I'm like, no, she is not strong. She is she's too skinny.
I do not want to look like them. Yeah.
Yes. And I got so pumped up. There's a photo of her with Channing Tatum.
Yeah.
And they're like embracing arms, and her arm makes him look like a midget. And I'm just like, see, that is the difference between putting a real strong, fit woman on in a movie, because Channing Tatum's like, he's not a big guy. And next to someone who really works out, he's not going to look big anymore, And I love seeing him next to someone with real muscles, and she's so beautiful. And you see him next to those tiny little actresses, and he looks big, but she's what working out and being fit and being awesome really look like.
Yeah. And when she's on the big screen and she's doing those sequences of the moves, the the karate, judo, all the different moves, it is like jaw-dropping.
And that's a movie to see.
Yeah, I'm going to go see it. That's awesome. Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Jill. So there's our chick news, and I guess that's it for this week, yeah?
That's a wrap, yeah. Thank you again, Janine, for your time and being on the show.
Thank you for having me. It was a great time.
And thanks, Monica, wherever you are. Bye.
Bye-bye.
I'm baring teeth and I'm cutting veins so I can make sure that you